Well, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Happy Democracy Day. It's the first time that we shall be celebrating it nationwide, since the day was changed from May 29 to 20 to June 12. And of course, everybody knows the station hasn't been saying it's talking about anything else. What June 12 symbolizes. The man widely believed to have won the 1993 election, MK Abiola. He's central to it all. Okay, so here we are. The honor has been done him, and we continue. You've heard the president's broadcast, and we shall take it from there, and we shall, really speak with some, contributors and find out what exactly where they think that we are now. We shall be speaking with later in the program, Mr. Epetedo, NADECO Secretary General and spokesman. And later on, we shall be speaking with some people who are very close to the struggle, because that's what it is. It's a struggle. People struggled, people sacrificed for the actualization of June 12. It wasn't to be, and indeed, the great man himself, Abiola, he sacrificed. The ultimate sacrifice, in fact, was paid. So later on, we'll be talking to people who were close to him. We have on our list, we'll be speaking with Mr. Tunji Bello, Honorable Commissioner in Lagos State, going back to, something like 30 years ago, people who really worked with him. And also we'll be speaking with a lawyer, author, journalist, Richard Akinola later on. And of course, your calls are tremendously important. And indeed, today we'll be, extending the program a bit, because we imagine there will be a few comments, maybe commentaries indeed that will be coming in. So we'll be extending the program till 12 noon today instead of our regular 30. That takes us to 90 minutes instead of the usual 1 hour. Okay, let's start off. Let's kick off the ball. We have our first, documentary sort of background to set the scene. Can't get tired of seeing it. It's the Epetedo package. Stay with us.
Epetedo was an unassuming locality on Lagos Island, but it was not without historical importance. The community became home to some of the followers of the deposed and exiled Oba Kosoko of Lagos in the late 1800s. Kosoko was sacked by the British colonialists for refusing to end the transatlantic slave trade, and his troops face off with the British forces. And when Chief MK Abiola decided to stand up to the military after the annulment of his electoral victory in 1993, he chose Epetedo in the heart of Lagos to declare himself the president of Africa's most populous country.
The people of this country went to polls on Saturday, June 12, 1993, and without let or hindrance chose me as their president.
The Epetedo Declaration is not just an attempt by Abiola to reclaim its mandate. It has become a symbol for resilience, resistance, and democratic struggle. 26 years after the famous declaration that catapulted Epetedo from obscurity into global attention, the area seemed to have settled back into its unassuming nature. This is the hall where Chief Abiola made the declaration before the military government in power arrested and incarcerated him.
One of the most
Abdurrashid Aremu Jawando, who also witnessed the Epetedo declaration, said Abiola chose the location because most of his loyalists and trusted people, including Wahab Dosumu, Adeniji Adele, and himself, were from the community.
But we received Abiola with full-fledged arms. He wore complete suit. After reaching here, he was asked to change to complete native dress, green and white. He wore it. But there was a time we are spending like 20, 30 times. Abiola said, we should hold up, we should hold up. In his language, he used to talk. He has had that there is information from the government to come and arrest us.
While Abiola has been given the deserved recognition as president and confirmed posthumous as Grand Commander of the Federal Republic, GCFR, Epetedo is yet to be immortalized as a significant part of his story after 26 years. Abiola's declaration came a year after 1993 presidential election, which he contested on the platform of the Social Democratic Party. He had won 58.36% of the total vote cast. He had also secured highest number of votes in 20 out of 30 states against Bashar Tofa of the National Republican Convention. Apart from the cry for the development of Epetedo, the people want an inclusion of the community in the immortalization of Abiola. But how can this be achieved? In the face of seeming negligence, Mr. Jawando said the government's immortalization of Nigeria's icon of democracy should include Epetedo.
All our efforts to make everything June 12 to be prominent. Up to today, June 12 is being prominent. Even the federal government, Buhari too, has recognized this June 12, recognized us too, and make sure that we sanitize all this area for us. Sanitize, make it a very friendly looking place for us to live happily.
In his declaration on that day, Abiola said only real democracy can move Nigeria forward towards progress, and hence the respect she deserves from the international community. He also said masses should be seeking to see people who have shown little or no personal achievement, either in building up private businesses or making success of any tangible thing, being placed in charge of management of the nation's economy by rulers who are not accountable to anyone.
Okay then, so first of our packages, and indeed first of our guests coming up, Mr. Ayo Okpadokun, who has kindly agreed to join us from his study there. Mr. Ayo Okpadokun is the Secretary General and spokesman of National Democratic Coalition, NADECO. Thank you very much, sir, as always, for coming on.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians, and good morning, Yori.
Thank you very much. These are Corona times, so here we are. Otherwise, you would have been in the studio. Now, you put out a statement yesterday. There's so many statements, commemorating June 12th. And it seemed to me that you feel that, yes, we are making some progress, especially the commemoration of that sacrifice of so many people across the country. But you think that for it to be actualized, we have to return to what some people are referring to as a true federalism. Could you elaborate on that a bit, please?
Well, thank you very much, Yori. I'm not about to qualify federalism in any form, true or untrue federalism. Federalism is federalism. Professor T.K. Weir remained the most prolific authority on federalism and its features. Chief Obafemi Awolowo was the prime promoter of federalism in governance in Nigeria, and he wrote a book in 1966 while he was in prison in Calabar. And the fact of the matter remains that Nigeria secured its independence on a federal constitutional governance. This was what was negotiated by the ethnic nationalities and the political leaders, because they were mindful that Nigeria is composed of heterogeneous people with different languages, different religions, different cultures, different traditions, different artifacts, different folklores, different mores, different morals. All these were to be given free rein while we all meet at the center. That's what they call unity in diversity. But they were just 5 years into governance, and they were providing commensurate, decent, responsive governance to Nigerians when the politicians in military uniform decided to terminate Alhaji Tafawa Balewa's government and substituted for it a military set of decrees, decrees 1 to 9, which centralized and unitarized governance in Nigeria since then. And the consequence of concentrating power in the hand of the commander-in-chief at the occasion unmitigated quantum of injustice, inequity, unfair play, repression, and total contempt for the protection of the rule of law. That's what has happened, to the extent that some people in governance, since the army struck, have counted themselves as the owner of the entity, the political project called Nigeria, while others are on the sideline as spectators. That is why Nigeria, that at least for over 20 years was exporting 2 million barrels of crude oil every day, and at average price of $100 per barrel, cannot show anything for such humongous money that has been made out of it. Rather, we are underdeveloping.
Okay.
Instead of developing. Today, the World Bank
sorry to
just
interrupt.
stated yesterday, just yesterday, the World Bank said out of the poorest people in the world, a third of them are concentrated in India, Ghana, and India, Nigeria, and Congo.
Okay. Yes. Well, apart from the statement coming out yesterday, I wonder if you think that we are in a better place, because I've heard commentary than we were. And I say this against the backdrop because I know you have a further criticism that the ruling party, APC, in 2015 had promised to actually look into this whole matter of federalism. You said you don't want to qualify it, whether the federalism is federalism. And you think that they are reneging on that promise. But yet, when you look at the president's statement, and indeed other high-powered commentators, they say that no matter how, slight, if that is indeed how one wants to see it, we are making some sort of progress. Would you grant us much?
I will not. I'm not about to becoming part of the rot. If a political party manifesto remains an article of faith that if you voted us into power, we will do this. It was in the manifesto of the APC in 2015 that they will ensure that Nigeria returns to federal constitutional governance. They have failed to do so. About 2.5 years ago, they went ahead now, playing some game by setting up the El-Rufai committee, which I still regard as an afterthought. And 5 years into President Buhari's 8-year tenure, nothing had been heard about that. And we believe very strongly that in spite of all his benign efforts on his 3 programs of securing the nation, making the economy better, fighting corruption, they've resulted into very little achievement, because the centralist unitary governance that you are passing through does not provide for qualitative governance whereby all that he wanted to do itself are achievable. For example, security is a local matter. Somebody is sitting in Abuja dictating how to secure Lagos. Somebody is sitting in Abuja dictating how security will be operated in Sokoto. Look at what the bandits are doing in Sokoto, to the extent that the governor there is lamenting as if there's no government in Nigeria. President Buhari as a general we voted for him because he was a general, and we thought that he was capable of rectifying the anomaly. But unfortunately, this is the 5th year of his governance. It was a fact that about 24 local governments were occupied by the Boko Haram, an affiliate of ISIS, before he got into office. Yes, they've been totally, maybe they've been sent packing from those 24 local governments, but they are still unsubdued. They are still very potent. They've been attacking at will, both civilian targets, soft targets, and even the military itself. Look at what they did again 2 days ago, to the extent that a large number, almost 100 civilians were attacked and violently sent to the grave, to the extent that the governor was lamenting. That is to say that up to now, 5 years into the governance of President Buhari, he has not been able to secure the nation. So I do not see what is it to really to commend him upon in that regard.
But you do seem to give a sort of a grudging acknowledgement that indeed the terrorists have been dislodged from their former strongholds. And I'm saying this because you just said so yourself, that yeah, be that as it may, but you would have wanted perhaps a much more vibrant approach. Apart from vibrancy, the other thing that, if we go back to the whole premise of, Hope 93, which, as you know, was Abiola's sort of manifesto, he envisaged hope for the country. Now, that hope surely is not lost. The torch has been passed. It's not easy. It's not easy. People are talking about fairness being a problem, because a lot of people have been commenting that fairness in this country, they're not too sure how it is going. Would you like to comment on that whole area as well, as part of the whole developmental process? Because as you are talking, sir, and rightfully so, complaining, you're not the only one. Fairness, how would you talk about fairness in this society? Because that is when there would not be as much restiveness, perhaps, as there is.
Well, my comments are simple. There is no adherence to the features of federalism. The military oligarchy that have captured Nigeria since January 15, 1966 are still in control. Power is concentrated in the hand of the commander-in-chief, nay, the executive presidential system they foisted upon us. So, and that advocated marginalization, inequity, unfair play, discrimination. And there's no way by which this thing really can be rectified except we return to federal constitutional governance. Let me remind you of something. A major matter for which we have complained seriously against had been the fact that even what they call the National Security Council, what you have today as Nigeria's National Security Council, is a deception. Section 14 of the Decree 24 called 1999 Constitution, which is under Section 2, dealing with fundamental objective and directive principle of state policy. Section 14, subsection 3, says in the composition of any agency of government, no one particular set of people or adherence to one faith or tribe should be much more than the others in the composition of such an agency. But look at the setting we have been dealing with in the last 5 years. In the National Security Council, President Buhari, the chairman. The Minister of Defense now is Magashi from Kano. The director of SSS is from Katsina. The minister, the chief of army staff is from Katsina. The National Security Advisor is also from Northeast. Now, given that state of affairs, the service chiefs, most of them, except the chief of defense staff, who has no power in any case, the chief of naval staff, what power does he have?
Mr. Padoku, I think you're watching yourself on television. Why don't you speak to us?
Yes.
Here, don't watch yourself on television, sir. Aha, thank you.
Majority of them are all northerners. So that's why in our statement, we urge President Buhari to recompose that National Security Advisor and the National Security Council so that it will reflect Nigeria, not the current Northern Security Council that we have.
Okay.
Because in the debate as to whether or not we are secured, we ought to be satisfied that those who are taking decision on our behalf to protect us really represent us. Now they don't represent us. That's part of the thing, the marginalization.
Well, I don't know if you would agree that you're taking a pretty severe look at the situation, especially against the backdrop of those who say that, look, we're not exactly where we were in 2015. Gains have been made.
For how many years?
Gains have been made.
For how many years shall we continue in this one? Those of us who laid down our lives, who lost our sweat, our blood, our possession, our liberty.
To us here, sir. Don't worry with the television. Speak to us, sir.
We cannot continue to watch idly with this really untoward governance that has reduced us to nothingness. We are underdeveloping, not developing.
Well, you're not.
We are not developing. We're underdeveloping.
Well, elder statesman Clark has also, spoken very much along these lines in the statement that he also released. I'm sure you would have seen it. He speaks also about the unfairness in this society. But
how can you justify what the situation today that you have in the country? How can you justify the situation that you have in the country? That even in the sphere where that made people like us to struggle to campaign vigorously for President Buhari in 2015 was about his campaign to fight corruption. How do you define what his government did and nothing that happened to today? It was reported very, very widely, and it has not been denied, that Nigeria Attorney General went to Dubai and brought Meina, who ran away after he had been alleged that he had taken a huge sum of money, and he was already in the office before Nigeria cried out.
Yeah, but
what kind of situation is that?
In that, those things are there. But is democracy, since today is the Democracy Day, is democracy?
I don't believe.
I don't believe you. Better off? Is democracy as a concept better off in our country than before the arrival of Muhammadu Buhari? And I guess there are those who are willing to say that it's a work in progress. It's nowhere near where we want it to be yet, but it can't be thrown out wholesale. Might be what some people would say, and I would include you among those who would say that you can't throw the baby, this democratic baby out with the...
I don't believe that it takes eternity to restore Nigeria to democracy.
But we already have the democracy. So we have democracy, so-called. We have democracy.
I don't believe that you have the democratic governance. What you have is a civilian government. What is democratic in all that has happened in the last 21 years?
But it's
for example, the Nigerian Supreme Court told Obasanjo that he had no power to retain the local government fund of Lagos, and he retained it until he left office. Nothing happened to him. He sacked 3 governors, civilian governors, through by a fiat, using the instrument of government to go and capture parliamentarians from Bayelsa, took them to Abuja, got them now to impeach Alamesi so that he could be arrested. He did the same thing for Plateau. He did the same thing for Ekiti. All is democratic in that.
Uncle Ayo, if you look at me, not at the television, look at me here. Aha, thank you, sir. Now, all those things.
So what is democratic in what it's doing?
All those things are indeed...
There's no indices of democracy in what we are doing presently.
Okay.
I'm saying to you that the popular will of Nigerians have no relevance with the current governance, and it has not started. It didn't start with Buhari. Since it is the same set of people, military in uniform, governed us for 46 out of the 60 independence years of Nigeria. It was the same thing. Military took when they were in Kaki. That's what they are doing in Mufti.
You say you don't seem to you don't seem to want to allow. Hello, Mr. Kwadokun. You don't seem to want to allow that President Buhari was a general. He's a retired general. He's a Democrat, and he's been making.
I don't believe.
He's been making arguably great strides. The very June 12th that we are celebrating, it took a Buhari to come along. You might say that's so what? It took a Buhari to come along and, you know, much to the chagrin of all those who had gone before him, do what has been referred to as the politically courageous thing. Some indication of breaking with the past. And besides, the whole concept is still a work in progress. It might be argued. You can't have, as they say, Rome was not built in a day. But it's not that there are not hands on the plow. That would be the argument of some.
Yori, I pray that you do not join the group of those who imagine that Nigeria is not capable of being better. Those with whom we secured independence at the same time are far, far better off than us. The Asian tigers.
But we have a different circumstance, is what I am saying, sir. We have a different circumstance, and so we're going to have to address our circumstances.
Nigeria is not more than 10% of India. It's not. I say Nigeria is not more than 10% of India, and today India is doing its utmost best to ensure that democracy thrives.
Okay.
And development and progress is on. What I'm saying to you is this: Nigeria ought to have done better.
All right.
We thought that in our effort to secure Nigeria, to secure democracy for Nigeria, that those who will take over governance will take policy measures that will lead to the qualitative upliftment of the living condition and standard of living of Nigerians. But that is not what we have gotten in the last 21 years.
Okay, 21 years, yes. But this administration, I hear you, sir, but this administration has only been at it, as you said, for 5 years, out of an 8-year term. But I take the criticism that the fact that you're not even willing to allow a shekele kind of progress, not at all. It seems that nothing is right, is what you seem to be saying.
No,
sir.
What I'm not saying, you see, what I've said, I recognize the benign efforts that the present government is doing, but it has not led to any qualitative and quantitative progress that can manifest in the lives of our people.
Okay.
There's too much poverty. The misery is too much.
Indeed.
I'm honest with you.
I want to thank you.
Maybe those of you are in the high towards, those of you who are big men in the side, you can't appreciate where we are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
We know where the shoe is pinching.
Yeah.
Nigerians are going through horror.
Indeed.
I
think
there
are many who will agree with you.
I wanted Buhari to succeed. I campaigned vigorously for him.
But
and
you've been disappointed.
Perhaps he was even the best in the circumstance. But what we are witnessing is that all the benign efforts are not yielding fruit because you are concentrating, you are centralized and unitarized governance.
Okay. All right. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Epetedo. I always want to say chief, but you don't allow it, Mr. Epetedo.
You know I'm not one, and I don't want to be one.
Thank you very much for giving us your stern opinion, but some things have to be said. And indeed, we thank you for not holding back and telling it to us by your lights, the way you see it. I want to thank you very much, sir, for coming on.
We put in too much.
All right, then. Okay, so we'll now go over to Eagle Square in Abuja, and these are coronavirus times, so we'll see how it differs this year. It is live. That's why okay. So okay. Hello. So, I mean, what we have there is a different kind of democracy day. Coronavirus, no doubt, is responsible. But look at Eagle Square. Can you believe it? Tell us about it, please.
Yes, it is indeed very different today at the Eagle Square. This ordinarily is where the Democracy Day would have been celebrated. Since the last over 20 years now that we've started democracy, it's also May 29 before June 12 is always a beehive of activities here. But today, where the president usually holds his speech, is a sleep bay. You can see some people sleeping on the podium. It's a sleep bay, and every other place is very dry, scanty. There's nobody around except few security operatives that are here to keep watch over what is to make sure that there's nothing going bad here. But ordinarily, even Abuja city is very scanty today because of the deadly virus, and everybody is keeping to the protocols by NCDC and the Health Ministry. And we just hope that this time next year, the Eagle Square can go back to how it used to be to celebrate the Democracy Day.
Well, actually, there's very little to say, but we had to touch base with Eagle Square. So thank you very much, Moyo, for showing it to us. Seeing is believing. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Okay, now... Well, actually...
And Nigeria was on the threshold of independence. There was a brief ceremony.
60 years ago, Nigeria attained independence from its colonial masters precisely on the 1st of October 1960.
This was the dramatic takeover by the new nation's own green and white flag.
As of 2020, 29 out of 60 years of Nigeria's existence has been spent under different military regimes. Democracy in Africa's most populous country suffered most of its setbacks in the 70s and the 80s.
This was the first session.
Nigeria's first attempt at democracy was in 1960 during the First Republic, which was born after it gained independence from Great Britain.
Dr. Ezekwe.
Nigeria fell prey to its first of many military coups on the 15th of January 1966.
General Ojukwu left behind about 2 million starving Igbos.
A 30-month war broke out afterwards from 1967 to 1970. The country witnessed military rules under different dictators in two main periods, from 1966 to 1979, from 1983 to 1999.
Hours earlier, he'd accepted the surrender of the secessionist Eastern region.
There were brief moments of democracy in the country following the first military incursion into politics in 1966.
Employment and health and education services in a shambles.
For instance, the military administration of General Olusegun Obasanjo handed over power to the democratically elected government with Alhaji Shehu Shagari as the president from 1979 to 1983.
Now, Nigeria's new military rulers have accused Shagari and his government.
The Second Republic ended 13 years of military stronghold on the polity, which began in 1966.
Like this, he and his colleagues survived at least.
Then the military truncated the Second Republic again after a coup that brought in Major General Muhammadu Buhari to power.
And set this country once again.
This time, the military ruled the country for 16 years between 1983 and 1999. With a form of secondary democracy midwifed by General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida.
This man, General Babangida, the army chief of staff, the hand behind the last coup.
He styled himself as a military president from 1985 to 1993 when he handed over to an interim national government headed by Chief Ernest Shonekan. Babangida supervised one of the longest transition programs in the country, which terminated with the annulment of June 12 presidential election won by MKO Abiola.
Therefore, that this administration attaches the greatest importance.
The political crisis that followed the annulment culminated in the arrest and incarceration of Abiola in 1994.
I'm being arrested. I'm just going out now with the police.
The business mogul died in detention on the 7th of July 1998 without reclaiming his mandates.
There's so much hassle in all these things, and when it's only one man. My father told me when the cousin was made 4 man, my father didn't know it is F-O-R-E. He thought it was FOUR. He said, how can a man call himself 4 man? Every man is 1 man.
The interim government of Shonekon was overthrown by General Sani Abacha, who ruled the country from November 1993 to the 8th of June 1998, when he died in office.
1997, October to December.
His successor, General Abdusalami Abubakar, organized a transition to civil rule, which led to the presidential election in February 1999. Former military ruler Chief Olusegun Obasanjo won the election and was sworn in as the president on the 29th of May 1999, ending the 29 years military rule in the country.
All Nigerians and to the world that they have to stay only minimum short period to bring about democracy.
The end of military rule in 1999 brought a new era of regular elections as well as return of civil liberty in the country.
We have to vote because we're in the transition program. We have to change the leadership of the government.
So June 12 and May 29 became significant in Nigeria's political history and struggle for democracy.
We are being told that the judiciary behaves so badly that I, Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, should be penalized for his conduct.
While June 12 was recognized, May 29 was celebrated as Democracy Day in Nigeria until President Muhammadu Buhari changed the course of history.
On behalf of the federal government, I tender the nation's apology to the family of late MKO Abiola.
In 2018, he recognized Abiola as winner of the June 12, 1993 presidential election and a true hero of Nigeria's democracy. He also declared that June 12 as a new Democracy Day in the country and May 29 recognized as Inauguration Day. While this year marks the 27th anniversary of June 12, 1993 presidential election won by MKO Abiola, it is 21 years of return to democracy in Nigeria, the longest ever enjoyed by the country in its 60 years of existence. Ayodele Uzuakun, TVC News, Lagos.
Federal government recognition of June 12 as National Democracy Day.
Okay, and we move on the June 12 story. This is the first time that we're really celebrating it pan-Nigeria. And the next of our guests is a veteran journalist, lawyer, and political scientist, Tunji Bello. Honorable Tunji Bello is currently the Minister of the Environment and Water Resources in Lagos. But did I say minister? Oh, actually, commissioner. He understands me, and we're so glad to have him. He's a man who's been very, very close to the symbol of June 12, MKO Abiola. You know, as I was saying, just by way of introducing Mr. Honorable Tunji Bello, twice appointed as Commissioner for Environment. He's also been Lagos State Secretary to the government. He's been so many different things. Even though he started out in journalism, he's been head of the Lagos State Signage Department, and was, you know, Director General of Governor Babatunde Raji Fashola's re-election campaign. It just goes on, and yet this is a man who started out in journalism and has made waves in governance generally. Funnily enough, not really staying in journalism, and after he left journalism, he's also been, by the way, starting out in journalism, talking about that, started out in the Concord Press, where with a lot of colleagues that are also making waves today. Started out, he was editor in Sunday Concord, and later, when Dele Alake, who occupied the position, left to join the administration of Governor Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the first administration, he took over as national editor of National Concord. I could just go on and on, but I don't want to spend so much of the time because I want to talk with Mr. Tunji Bello about your closeness to MKO Abiola. In fact, you were his special assistant. Good morning, Honorable Tunji Bello.
Good morning, Yori. I'm happy to join you this morning. Thank you.
Okay. So here we are remembering today. You know, it's, of course, along with many others, MKO paid the ultimate sacrifice finally. And but would you say that, look, it's difficult to put it, are we better off now that the current administration, has done what it has done? It has indeed put honor where honor is due. But we are getting different opinions. Some saying that the progress hasn't been fast enough. What would you say? Bearing in mind that Hope, going back all those years to '93, Hope was his rallying cry. Do you think that there is still reason to be hopeful today?
Well, first let me thank you for inviting me this morning. And what I would like to say first is that let us first of all commend General Buhari or President Buhari for even giving it fit to recognize the June 12th struggle. I think we deserve a lot of commendation on that. In respect of as to why whether we have earned a lot from the struggle, or whether we have justified all the struggles that people have made, people have sacrificed for, well, I think it's debatable. Well, but so far so good. I think we have made a lot of progress, and we have made a lot of marks. We have had a lot of setbacks previously, and I think with time we continue to build up on it and so on. But the most important thing that I think we have left behind is that I think the civil society, Nigerian civil society, is being left behind gradually. During the struggle for the June 12th thing, I could recall we have a very, very proactive and strong civil society. But that's no longer the case. The civil society we have today is a bit weak. And that in itself has weakened the democracy that we have today. Now, if you look at the institutions of democracy, whether you look at the legislature, you look at the executive, you look at the judiciary, and so on. If you look at the qualities of what we have today, I must say that we still have a long way to go in that respect. So for me, I think it has to be a collective effort. We all have to go back to the drawing board and try and renew all the struggles as well as all the,
One theme, if you're still with us, I don't know if the video froze there. One theme that we seem to be hearing from a lot of commentators is the whole question of equity in our society today. Coming from the premise of hope that MKO was all about, yes, it was truncated, but along with people who were in the vanguard of him trying to reclaim his mandate, talking about Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and other such people. And by the way, you no doubt are aware of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's message that he also put out. As you say, there's a lot to be done, but hope, that hope, you say there's a lot more to be done. Equity seems to be what I'm hearing from a lot of commentators. They can't understand. They think it's a bit unbalanced. Should that be, or what do you think is the reason for this in this present time that we have? The whole matter about people thinking we have an unbalanced society, people commenting on that insistently.
I think the basic thing has to do with the system. I listened to Mr. Yokwadokun the last time. I think he was right in a way. I think it has to do with the federal structure we have. We are not running a federal system in a true sense, for me, and that in itself is affecting the way we are practicing our democracy. We don't have strong institutions now. The states are weakened, and all the institutions that are supposed to support democracy, they are one way or the other in a state of I would say they've had a lot of setbacks in that regard, and I think it has to do with the structures. For instance, let me give you an look at the federal system we are running. There's no federal constitution. There's no federal constitution in the world, and I'm saying as a matter of fact. Whether you look at Australia, you look at the United States, you look at Canada, you look at Germany, you look at all of them. There's no federal constitution where you have a local government enshrined inside the constitution. So the federal government has no business with the local governments. So the principle of federalism is supposed to operate between the states and the federal government. But now we have a situation where the federal government has to allocate funds to the local government and so on. That is an aberration for me. And I don't think we should be able to sustain that, really. And that in itself has weakened our democracy. So the states have become powerless to that extent. And when the states are powerless and so on, and you have a very strong federal government and so on, why is it very, if you look at, and that is why the corruption keeps increasing. When there is so much, everybody is struggling to go to the federal, everybody is struggling to have his own pie from the federal government. And I don't think we can continue to operate our democracy in that regard. So we need to return strictly to the principle of federalism in a true sense.
Okay. Now, the other matter, talking about federalism, which both of you have now criticized, our former guest and you yourself have said that, well, federalism, so-called, as we are operating it, is not real federalism. Mr. Epetedo said that he didn't even want to qualify federalism. Federalism is federalism. Your party, the ruling party, did say, as Mr. Epetedo, remembered, that it would work towards this. I don't know if you are aware of much movement in that direction.
I can't get, can you come again, please?
I was saying that since you're also speaking about federalism, your party, the ruling party, had also said in 2015 that it would work towards, achieving federalism, to have a proper federating country. I don't know if you've noticed any appreciable progress towards that.
I think a committee was set up in that regard, comprising of some governors and so on, and they submitted the report. So we are waiting for the outcome of the report. And I think until the outcome, until we have the outcome, there's only much I can say. I believe that the working of federalism is still in progress.
Okay. Now I did say that you were very close to the main man of of the time. Back in the day, we're talking about MKO Abiola. You were at the time his special assistant, and you traveled a lot with him widely. So you would know. In fact, that's a picture with MKO there. I think that's of blessed memory now, Dr. Hayford Ailele. I don't know where you were there, but I also know that you traveled very much with the man. The ideas, because you wrote up with a host of other people. You actually wrote his program. What was he thinking about, and where do you think? How do you think he would view what we have today?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. I think that's his program right there.
Let me start from the beginning. If I must recollect, in 1992, December 1992. I think Chief MKO Abiola invited 3 of us to his house. Dele Alake, who was then the editor of Sunday Concord, Segun Babatope, who was the chairman of the editorial board, and myself as the group political editor at that time. And he asked us a question. He said, he's running for the presidency, but which party should he join? We had 2 parties at that time, the SDP and the NRC. We were very unanimous. We said charity begins at home. Most parts of the Southwest are SDP. So they are liberal, unlike the NRC that is right-wing. And if you must recollect, Chief Abiola was MPN in the Second Republic, and it didn't succeed much. That experiment did not succeed much, particularly because he had to resign from the party. But he has become more acceptable by the generality of people in Nigeria, and our own opinion at that time was that it was better for him to join the Social Democratic Party and so on. He accepted it. And that was how he joined the Social Democratic Party. And that's how the struggle began. So from there, we went through the primaries. We went through a lot of things and so on. We set up a committee. And that committee, we prepared the Fairway to Poverty. There were 7 of us in it. We had Dele Alake was a member, Segun Babatope, myself, Dr. Yemi Ogunbiyi, Dr. Chidi Amuta, Chika Akabogu, and Nnamdi Obasi. 7 of us who prepare the book Fairway to Poverty. and we wrote we wrote the program, and we presented, which was presented to the populace at that particular time, and so on. And that's how the struggle began. So, and I also traveled with him because he was honored. I traveled with him before the primaries.
Okay.
I was the one that.
In fact, that was the previous picture that was shown, the previous one, where he was in an academic robe.
Yeah. I think I had to travel in January, just before the primary. We had the world primary in January. So I traveled with him to about 5 countries. First, we went to Uganda. He was going to be honored for contributing to the struggle to liberate Uganda from Milton Obote at that time. Milton Obote was a dictator, and Museveni at that time was the one that was leading the armed struggle against Milton Obote. And I think it was still MK Abiola was one of the people that funded Museveni. So when Museveni, after about a few years or so, Museveni felt Abiola deserved to be honored. So he was invited to Makerere University with President Mwalimu Nyerere of Tanzania to be honored, because Tanzania at that time also contributed to helping Museveni in becoming in chasing Milton Obote away. So he was honored. And after that, after being conferred with honorary doctorate degree by Makerere University, we left for South Africa. Mandela had just been released at that particular time. So we went to ANC secretariat. Mandela received us at the ANC secretariat in South Africa, in Johannesburg. So, and the ANC, they were having a meeting when we arrived. Mandela had to leave that meeting to come and welcome MK Abiola, and he was so full of praise for Abiola for contributing to the liberation struggle in South Africa. So we were all, and after that, we left for several other countries. I think Zimbabwe, Saudi Arabia, and several other countries at that time. So, and that shows you the kind of person MK Abiola was. MK Abiola's contribution was not limited to Nigeria. He contributed to the struggle of several African countries. And I've mentioned Uganda, I've mentioned South Africa, and several others that we don't need to mention. So he was not just a great man in Nigeria, he was a great man internationally.
He saw the potential of Nigeria and sort of had a very clear idea, I think, as to how to exploit, utilize that potential. Would you say that is a fair assessment?
Oh, yeah.
It stuck for a while, but I'm sure it's going to loosen up again. We're talking about the man Abiola. You can't talk Democracy Day, June 12th, without the man Abiola. And so we're looking at some of those who were close to him, like in the case of Honorable Tunji Bello, personally, and we have another guest who actually never met with him, but that goes back to activism that is also being spoken of there now, and I know he will have a number of things to say about the quality of activism now as opposed to then. And talking about activism, as soon as we get Mr. Tunji Bello back on, no doubt we'll also talk a bit about when you talk about the struggle, the June 12th struggle. Aha, you're back now. We were talking about, because we're trying to sort of go back to the man Abiola, those of you who worked closely with him. In fact, his Concord Press, there was a stable of you young men back in the day, we're talking about 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago now. That stable includes, but apart from you, people like even Femi Adesina, the current spokesperson of the president, Dele Alaki has been mentioned, and some of the guys that you have also mentioned. Exactly. All of those people were involved. All of those people were involved, so to speak, as foot soldiers during those days of Abiola's aspiration.
Yes.
Now,
all of them.
Well, you see, I could do this for ages, but unfortunately, we've got to cut it short here. You say that there is hope. It's not the best that it could be, and I think you've also laid some of the blame at the door of the whole matter of whether or not we have a federation, whether we have true federating units. I want to thank you very much for your insight and going down memory lane with us.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you. Okay, then. We'll go on a break now. Please stay with us. Okay, welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Now let's move on to, just before our next guest, Olawakon, put together a package for June 12, which features the Abiola children.
He had all. He was comfortable but disturbed by the situation of the country as handled by the military government. MKO Abiola decided to take up the mandate of giving hope to the Nigerian citizen. MKO action! He understood the task ahead and was optimistic that victory was sure. Yes, victory came. He triumphed but never got to the promised land alive.
I'm being arrested. I'm just going out now with the police.
MKO's family, that was the envy of the African continent and perhaps the world, got shattered by the demise of the man who wanted all Nigerians to have the opportunity to vote and be voted for. The children agree that the family has not recovered from the rude shock of their father's death on 7th of July, 1998.
It was a very, very huge loss for the whole family, what happened, But we thank God that we have a close-knit family.
It would have been much easier had he been alive, because a lot of the challenges that we encountered, we probably would not have encountered them.
It was such a traumatic event, what happened to the family. So we all actually went out in different ways. So it's going to take some time for us to actually come back together and become a family once again.
Only Nigeria refused to honor me, and I'm sure they will do that one day.
The formal official federal government recognition of June 12 as National Democracy Day.
Almost 25 years after, exactly 6th of June 2018, President Muhammadu Buhari, a former military head of state, announced June 12 as Democracy Day. It's 2 years of this new reality in the history of Nigeria, and MKO Abiola's children believe although democracy has come to stay, but the way it is being practiced may not be the real definition of the democracy their father envisioned.
And when I think that my father campaigned on the platform that he would be able to put in place reforms that would have Nigeria saying farewell to poverty, I think that no, this is not what he would have wanted.
This might not be his version of his democracy, but this is democracy nonetheless. And what can we do to improve on it if we see it wanting?
Democracy is evolving, but the most important thing is that democratic choice, which is what Nigeria has. And definitely, once people can decide and determine who will become their leaders, then the democracy has been achieved.
On June 12, 1993, the people's hopes got expressed in a nascent democracy, but was murdered, along with a lot of those who had fought to make it happen.
Never thought people could be such cowards to kill an unarmed, 44-year-old woman, but people have their own mentality, Some people look at the world as it's like everything, but some of us see the world as a means to an end, It's a journey of a human being, does not stop here. But there's not everybody that has that mentality, so I can understand why they will go out of their way, because as far as they're concerned, they have to get whatever they want, and anybody that is standing in their way has to be eliminated.
Before the day was declared Democracy Day, Nigeria had been commemorating democracy and handing over on 29th of May. But what has changed since the pronouncement was made to honor MKO Abiola?
I would just encourage Mr. President to perfect what he started by even acknowledging the day to begin with and honoring my father and all the other people who fought and paid the supreme sacrifice alongside he did. So some of those people have also been honored. So I think it's important for us to know where we're coming from, and that gives us an idea of where we're going. So yes, before and after, I think it's still a process.
What can Nigeria do to grow the nation better and stronger?
The divisions are cracks in our wall that makes it difficult for us to come together as one and build and move as one to advance the country. So I want the government to continually think about how to sow the seeds of unity.
If we can just be selfless, think less of the material gains and think more of the collective gain, not the individual material gain, I think we're going to be better off as a country.
MKO Abiola is no more, but his legacy will live in the minds of millions of Nigerians who advocate free and fair elections, as exemplified in the June 12, 1993 polls, an offshoot of Nigeria's now Democracy Day. Ola Awakon, TVC News, Lagos.
And our thanks to Ola for that report. And on to our final guest now. And we've stayed in the media, so to speak, in the press, coming from Mr. Tunji Bello, who at one time was editor at Concord and one time editorial board chair at this day's newspaper. And even before then, Mr. Ayo Padokun, also a veteran journalist. And by the way, did I mention that, Tunji Bello is a lawyer as well. Now we come on to another lawyer, human rights activist, human rights and pro-democracy activist, author of at least 19 books. I'm talking about my friend, Mr. Richard Akinola, who at one time squarely manned the judiciary desk at Vanguard newspaper. He also had a stint at Concord Press. Is that not so, Richard?
I want to say Concord. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So thank you very much for joining us. Now, you're a prolific author yourself. I've just said that. But the difference here is that you didn't have any personal, dealings with MKO. You, however, because I introduced you for what you are, as a human rights activist and pro-democracy activist as well. And in the line of that activism, which goes back to your university days, of course, you've been a guest of arresting authorities on more than a few occasions. Now, you would have heard our last guest say that he would hold activism responsible for part of the, shall we say, the slowness of the pace. I wonder how you would react to that. Apparently, activists were a lot more vibrant in those days than now, talking about democracy and in the context of June 12. Your comments?
Well, I listened to my good friend Tunji Bello on that aspect, because we are dealing with two different eras. Under the military, we had one single enemy, and so we are more combative in dealing with that single enemy.
Okay.
Because now there are constructive engagements with the various stakeholders in the polity, and of course you have to change the how you change the narrative of governance, and that means we have to change strategies. And of course, during the military, we didn't have all this social media as it were now, but now lots of activists make use of the social media in different aspects of the struggle. So, and again, one has to look at the point of it that I say, these people are human beings. They are just like every other Nigerian facing similar challenges like Nigerians. And when you look at all the struggles of some of these guys, and some of them now facing some challenges right now, nobody bothers about them. I know of one guy who was shot during the demonstration on June 12th at Grodu Road when Abacha rolled out the tanks and killed over 100 protesters. One of our guys was shot. Now he can't even walk very well. He had undergone several surgeries. But nobody was going to assist him to take him to India about 2 years ago to complete the treatment. So the guy is handicapped. We have one of our guys now whose leg is amputated, one of the legs amputated because of diabetes. I mean, he was a very strong activist, but now nobody cares about him. So when you look at all these things, people now say, like, look, with all the things we have done, nobody bothered when they lockdown, nobody bothers about them. Everybody has to struggle on his own. So, and I look at it as these are human beings too. They are facing the same challenges, even though, as I said earlier, the strategies have different. And of course, don't forget that a number of our laws that are currently that have been passed in the past 20 years in the National Assembly have been a product of the advocacy of the civil society. So, but not many people know because, I mean, they are not in the National Assembly. But a number of advocacy of various laws, like freedom of information law, for example, was basically the brainchild of the civil society back in 1999, CLO, MRA, and a couple of civil society before everybody now keyed into the whole thing. So there are lots of areas in which the civil society have been working, but because the strategy is now different, unlike in the military when you are so combative. In those days, you go in the midnight, we go to Epetedo Road to free Abiola now. IBB must go. Lots of graffiti on Epetedo Road. But this time around, a lot of hashtags, a number of media advocacy in the social media. So the strategy has a bit different. So, and that's why people believe that, I mean, the civil society are not doing enough. And again, we have seen...
One moment, please. I'll return to you, Richard. One moment, please. Okay. Chidi has called in from Kaduna. Good morning, Chidi.
Good morning, Uncle Yori. Happy Democracy Day.
Good morning, sir. Happy Democracy Day.
Yes, I want to equally congratulate the entire Nigerian on this auspicious occasion of the 2020 Democracy Day, in spite of the brouhaha of coronavirus, which is a worldwide pandemic. But I want to believe that as far as Nigeria's democracy is still on a fledgling stage, at this point in time, the government of the day, having done so well in recognizing this day as the proper day for democracy celebration, because of the stand of late MKO Abiola and so many others that put their lives on the line in order to establish the democracy that we are enjoying today. I equally want to enjoin the government to ensure that the rights of citizens, things should be done, favoritism and some other ills that should not be identified with democracy is entrenched in order to ensure that our democracy will stand a test of time.
Indeed.
Thank you very much, Uncle Yori. God bless Nigeria.
Thank you very much, sir, for calling in. I appreciate your call. Richard, returning to you, now, as a human rights activist, you know, you're a lawyer and you're also a pro-democracy activist, and I mentioned that you didn't have any direct engagement with Abiola, but the idea and the idea of human rights and fairness, especially when his mandate was denied him, those were the times when you guys, as Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu said in his statement, you're among those who paid a price. Some paid the ultimate price. But I made the point that you yourself have been a guest of government, to put it discreetly and delicately, on quite a number of occasions, whether military government or now. How would you assess in these times, how many years, over about 30 years after the whole June 12 brouhaha, human rights, the condition of human rights, and related to this government, because that's what we have, how is this government doing for human rights?
Well, I think we shouldn't just isolate this government. We need to start from 1999 under Obasanjo. Okay. I mean, from Obasanjo to Yaradua, then Jonathan. Well, I think to a large extent, well, things are a bit, I mean, psychologically, things are a bit different. Unlike under the military, I mean, when we are being ruled by decrees. But even though we're under democracy, but we discover that there are lots of military mentality among the rulers. And in fact, I feel so angry about how a number of state governors under the current dispensations have been total dictators, absolute dictatorship going up in various states in the country. And I once said last week that if some of these governors were to be president of this country, Abacha's dictatorship would be the child's play. So what we are seeing at the state level is, in many states, a total dictatorship. So the governors, I mean, can't even accept any criticism by anybody. They use police, they use DSS to go and abduct critics. So, and because of our, I mean, damage mentality, even to obey court orders, even at the federal level, becomes an issue. So, and that is, we need to win ourselves of that military mentality. Because democracy without rule of law is no democracy.
Okay, one moment, please. One moment, please. Okay. Olani has called in from Sulere. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you for calling in, sir.
Happy Democracy
Indeed,
Day.
happy Democracy Day to you too.
In as much I appreciate what Buhari has done concerning June 12, there are still much more to do, in the sense that the equal distribution of appointment, across the section of the country. If you notice, there are a lot of nepotism going on in this administration. Looking at all the parastatals, we can see the only one aspect of this sector, one aspect of the country that is there, talking about police, security, and everything. Even the so-called our security, they are not performing at all. And in the situation where you see all the security chiefs, they are not performing. I think as a military man, Buhari ought to have dismantled them to make effective performance. And it's quite unfortunate that even under the Constitution of Nigeria, these guys have spent more than 35 years in ministry. And I don't know why he's still keeping them. Even I'm not a military man, I will be more aggressive.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Indeed, that's the way it is on TVC. People will say their piece. Thank you very much for your contribution. Richard, returning to you, you were explaining how activism had to change because the landscape changed. But going back to this whole concept of fairness, for instance, it was mentioned there, people talk about nepotism. People talk about favoring of different the aspects of areas of the country, much to the shortage of others. Those are not areas that activists, care to engage in, because this is not. If indeed, first of all, you accept that is so, that is not what people have been, activists for all this time.
No, you see, there are the various levels. And what I've just mentioned in terms of inequality, in terms of appointment, it's something a number of us have been talking about, even in the social media. Take, for example, if you see this list of various positions under NNPC, most of these appointments, I need up to about 16 appointments at the various parastatals and under NNPC and NNPC are being, populated by people from a particular part of the country. And when you see this kind of situation, it's natural to feel tutored, to feel that, wait a minute, that why, there's no fairness in terms of this appointment, and people believe that, well, we can do it and nothing will happen. Yes. So that engenders some kind of uprising and hostility towards the government. And the government is not even helping matters, because it's like take it or leave it.
Okay. Sorry. Let me bring in Comrade Tokwe in. Well, good morning, Comrade Tokwe. Akure.
Hello. Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for calling in, Comrade.
And I want to congratulate Nigerians for this Democracy Day.
Sure.
I want to say that it is no controversy that June 12th is a foundation of all what we are enjoying today. But my question is this, Uncle Yori. our coming on air and people talking to us can only be meaningful when it is measured with the effect of all this discussion on our leaders.
Okay.
You agree with me that in the Western world, they used to conduct what you say a public opinion, and leaders will consider this and have a rethink on whatever they are doing on the masses. It is contrary in Nigeria because we've had seminars, we have a lot of people sitting to talk of how this nation will move forward. But what effect does it actually have on our leaders?
That's
Do they have time to look at programs like this?
Food for thought. Thank you. I want to thank you very
effect.
much, comrade. I'm sorry, comrade. I want to thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you for calling in because we're fast running out of time. I wanted to return to Mr. Richard Akinola. Here we are, Richard.
Taking it from what the last caller said.
Sure.
You see, when you look at the agitations of Nigerians, particularly when Showore Saga was on, if not for the agitation and advocacy of civil society and quite a number of people, I mean, that's what forced the hands of government to obey court order. They didn't want to obey the court order.
Okay.
But because of continuous agitation and advocacy, that look, this democracy without rule of law is not democracy. You just have to obey court decisions. So this kind of to galvanize people into major struggle requires lots of ideas, lots of resources, and of course, but unfortunately, even the people you are fighting for, they don't even appreciate some of these things. After they say, "You people have come again, you are troublemakers," blah blah blah. So when you hear some of those things, I mean, it dampens the spirits of people because these people are people are dealing with human. When you look at what happened in the US over the George Floyd thing, it wasn't done by any civil society thing. It was a spontaneous general mobilization by people on their own.
Okay then.
So when are we going to have the kind of mass movement on people who don't rely and say, what are the human rights people doing? What are civil society people doing? What are you doing as an individual? Are you not angry about what is happening? So so the people that will lead, I mean, they say, okay, you're not too much, and now too much, this and that, because of partisanship, and which is a major challenge too we have in civil society.
Sure.
Some people owe allegiance to some political parties and some political lords, and that has, in a way, reduced the cohesiveness in the movement, because you can't believe that there's some so-called civil society people who supported continued incarceration of Showore, even after court had ordered his release. They supported the government for the Zope court order simply because they owe allegiance to the powers that be and to some political parties. That's the major challenge that we have.
Okay then. Well, I want to thank you very much, Richard, Mr. Richard Akinola, for making time to join us today and share your views. In fact, something you said reminded me of one of your books, They Have Come Again. You just had that in there. So I want to thank you very much and say to you, Happy Democracy Day 2020, Richard.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Indeed. So that's where we're going to have to leave it. And